a message for my people.
Nick Dad, baby. We the new label.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Come on, son.
Now this the black sheep sticking its home. I need a crib like I'm Gatsby.
I need it.
In hand, just understand my
Pockets that deep.
with nothing to prove. I ain't got nothing to do. When they can't compete and I got nothing to lose.
George.
Told me
Yes.
I'm the one that's gonna benefit.
One of our favorite people.
Absolutely.
One of the guys that really helped me in the sports betting space a lot. Had wrote a feature article that article that I was featured in. We fucking went to way back degenning, had to drive into Jersey, fucking put bets and just talking to him. He came to the Astoria Queens studio also. Writer, author, degenerate in the best way possible. Now currently writing for the Rolling Stones. Mr. David Hill is in the building.
I was hoping I'd get a jacket. I don't know. I think this is my 5th time on the show. You know, when the Tom Hanks hosted SNL the 5th time, they gave him a jacket. I'm trying to be the Tom Hanks of Veterans Minimum, man.
Yeah,
we got to get
we'll
some,
save one in the back.
yeah, we got to get some custom merch for people that are returning guests.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we got to start giving out merch when they first come on the show, then another merch item on the second. Then it's like, all right, we can't be giving out merch all the time, but when you hit the 5,
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
we gotta
and then
start
but
doing
then
it.
we'd expect, because it's like a pair of socks, then it's like a pair of pants, shirt, and then by the time that it's their 6th time, they're fully decked out. That's the
100%.
goal.
Yeah.
And then that's the uniform from here on out. I think that would be standard protocol.
Yeah. Real quick, before we really, because there's a lot we got to discuss with David. I forgot to mention this before when we were talking about the games. Once again, both teams, top 6 favorites in the Super Bowl. There is a massive trend. I believe 14 of the last 15 Super Bowl winners have been top 6 favorites. So if you look at the preseason futures, it was the Niners, Chiefs at plus 600. You had the Ravens and the Lions at 12-1. Then you had Buffalo, Cowboys, Bengals, Eagles all at 15-1. So I know there's more than 6
Right. But
teams, but the odds wise,
correct.
so this idea of like, yo, I'm going to bet on a team that's 200-1 is probably unlikely. It's coming from a top 6 favorite. So I just wanted to mention that before we actually start diving in with David here. Dave, what do you think about this Super Bowl, man? I know it's way early, but like, are the right 2 teams in here? Are you happy with it?
I mean, I was big on the Ravens this year, so no, I'm not happy with it. But it's, I think that the Chiefs are the right team. I think that's self-evident. And the Eagles, I was backing the Eagles too on the other side. I mean, I think the Eagles, were the right team, once the Lions were out. But, like a lot of people, I thought it was going to be Ravens-Lions. So, but I think the right 2 teams are here because they both won the right way, And so you can't say either one of these teams lucked their way into this. Unless you're one of these people that complains about the refs.
Yeah, I was about to say,
we were talking about
Yeah.
that. Nah, we're good. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
Fucking bet on the Chiefs if you think it's rigged. I don't know what to tell you. I feel like a lot of it has become so popular because I don't remember sports being rigged debates as much as it is now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the sports betting element of it too.
Yeah.
If not all of it, because now people have parlays and they have bets, and you're only this angry if you're an actual Bills fan or whoever plays the Chiefs and like people that bet against them, at least for me. And, it's perfect timing having this conversation with you because also like your article on the Rolling Stone, it's titled, "Is the $11 billion online sportsbook bubble about to burst?" My conversations with you and George the last time you were here are one of my favorites. And I genuinely mean that. I appreciate the relationship we have on social media and just like, we've been able to constantly communicate. Anytime you come to Vegas, you reach out. So I do want to say that means a lot to me because with you, these conversations are so interesting, especially like I said, we've known each other now for a couple of years and there's so much more shit that gets added to our conversation. I always like starting it off with you with this. Where are we now? Now it's 2025. I feel like when we first met, it was when Jersey got legal.
Yeah, 2019.
What's like the next breakthrough or how do you feel about sports betting right now?
Well, so the story that I wrote for Rolling Stone, I spent a whole year reporting it. It was really all of 2024. I it's a pretty big feature, and it's like 13,000 words, so it's a big one. But like, it's that long because it was a whole year's worth of reporting, and I spent time all year with sportsbook CEOs, with professional gamblers, with problem gamblers, with state legislators who were working on sports betting legislation, with bookies. And when I say bookies, I mean I went to Costa Rica and I hung out with, I hung out with the guys down in Costa Rica, the offshore bookmakers, and the guys who can't come back to the United States because they'll get pinched if they step offshore. So I hung out with pretty much every person involved in this industry. You know what I mean? Like from all the different angles to kind of get a sense of all these different perspectives and how people who, are involved in sports betting feel about it and what's going on, what the future is, right? And what I came away from that year feeling was that sports betting is at a really crucial crossroads right now, and that it's probably going to pick the wrong road, that the direction that we're probably headed down might be one that's not good. And what I mean by that is that every promise that these sports books, that the major sports books in America, FanDuel and DraftKings, are responsible for something close to 80% of the market at this point. So they've completely gobbled it all up. So they're really the industry, right? The promises that they've made, they haven't kept, right? They've fallen short. And what I mean by that is what they've told these states they would deliver in tax revenue hasn't really, they hasn't shown up. What they told gamblers they were going to offer them, they didn't really offer that, right? Like and what the general public has experienced, and by this general public, I mean like the square public, people don't bet, people that don't know nothing about gambling, what they've experienced has been very negative. The sort of like the pushback on sports betting from the general public is like, oh, this is terrible. All these ads, kids gambling, people getting addicted. All anybody talks about is gambling. It's ruining sports. It's really like this pearl clutching kind of narrative about it's ruining sports. That's everywhere too, right? So people are unhappy. And even the gamblers, even professional gamblers, people are unhappy. They don't like the way that things have shook out. And what the sports books are saying is, well, what we need is we just need iGaming. We just need mobile casinos. If you just let us have blackjack and slot machines on the apps, we can fix everything. That's what we need. And so that's kind of what I think the next chapter is. And I kind of think that's fucked up. I think that that's probably a bad direction for the industry to go in.
Yeah, 'cause I don't want the two to get mixed up at all, because I think it's two completely different things.
Absolutely.
I've never placed one wager on my phone on any of the casino games. I like to physically see the dealer spin the roulette wheel for me. Even though roulette sucks and there's no strategy, you're going to probably lose. The longer you're there, it's over time, you're going to lose. But I like to see the dealer spin the ball for me, right? I don't like the virtual. The virtual scares me. So
Sure.
I don't open that. And the thing that upsets me is because I'm super passionate about sports betting, clearly. I don't like that that's being blended in to the conversation about sports betting because it's completely different. But I can't also fault the companies being like, bro, that's a whole nother cash cow that we could open up on a user like George. It's like, oh, George, here on your phone, bro, you can hit a roulette table and play some craps as well.
Yeah.
Like to someone like me that's so passionate about it. And that's why I love the fan base that I've been able to build for about a decade now, because I've by no means have I ever told anyone that, oh, I bet professionally. No, not at all. I love the content. I love talking about it. My approach to a lot of things are professional when I talk to these guys. Dude, I'm a $25 to $100 bettor. Futures I hit pretty well, like pretty big. Had a couple like $500 futures for Euro Cup and Copa America. But I've never said that my income, one of my streams of income, is sports betting. The way we do our show, it's very playful. We tell people like, yo, these parlays, anytime touchdowns that pay 300 to 1, probably not going to hit. But we give you suggestions like, look, do a round robin. Do a straight bet on all these props, like a subathon or anytime touchdown, because it's plus 180s and plus 200s. You go 4 for 5, you're plus 7 units, as opposed to parlaying a $20 bet. You go 4 for 5 and you lose it.
Right.
So we've been able to, and even our fan base, which is my favorite thing about the audience, is they understand that too. And like for us, I think sports betting is dope. It's given me everything I have now, but also it took a lot for me to get to this point too, where I can understand a new bettor coming in. They don't have the same kind of discipline because, I've told the stories. I've sold Xboxes. I've sold sneakers.
Yep.
I've had to do a lot of fucked up shit to pay back bookies too. So I've been that guy also. I don't like what you said though, not you particular, but like the direction that you're saying. It upsets me, George.
I 100% agree with you. They're trying to recoup all these promises, right? And so I just based on a little bit of what I was seeing from your article, the states that I feel bookies weren't even in a lot, I don't understand how they were able to make the types of promises that they were making in the past. Like Colorado was an example. Like, what did the legislator honestly think was going to happen? One of my questions to you though is this whole like addiction based lifestyle that I feel like the government is really starting to promote. Legalization of marijuana, legalization of sports gambling. What do you think that does to the society, and like where do you think we are at a
It's a good
greater
question.
scale?
It's a good question, and I think that the reason that we're seeing, I think these things go together, hand in hand. The regulation of sports betting, regulation of the cannabis industry. I think states are turning to both of those industries because they want to figure out how to raise revenue without raising taxes, because Americans don't like paying taxes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so these things that they call sin taxes, right? Figuring out a way that you can create a voluntary tax where you can say, let's do this. If we open this up, like let's look at all the things that for years we've prohibited because of, moral reasons or whatever. Maybe we open some of these up. We can generate new revenue. It's money from nowhere. It's free money. We can use it to fill all these gaps in our budget because we've been cutting taxes. That's what's going on. And the story I like to tell is that, it's crazy to me that it took this long for gambling to become, for sports betting, but for gambling to become where they turned, because America was built on this stuff. People don't know this, but like the colonists didn't like taxes either, right? They obviously hated taxes. The first colony, so they created lotteries to pay for everything, because that was their way around saying, well, we won't tax you. We'll sell you a lottery ticket and we'll use the proceeds from that that's how they built Harvard University. That's how they built Yale. Like the founding fathers looked at gambling as a way to create a voluntary tax. You don't want a lottery ticket, you don't have to buy one. That's what built it, so gambling's always kind of been a part of the American culture. But it's weird that it's been this taboo thing that's been, illegal for so long. And now we're seeing the tide turning. It's kind of the last taboo to fall, right, is gambling. And I think it's interesting that there's been such a reaction to the regulation of sports betting, because the truth is we've been betting on sports for as long as there is sports, right? You know this. We've talked about this before. Sports and gambling have kind of always been intertwined. The only thing that's changing now is that some people who were able to kind of shield their eyes from it are now seeing it in full force. But for a lot of us, we've always experienced these things together. And people have really, like, once upon a time, this city was the only place you could go to gamble in America. Now there's casino gambling in 40-something states, right? There's lotteries everywhere. There's only like 2 states, I think, that don't even have a lottery. So there's gambling all around America, and sports betting should be something that we welcome rather than try to hold back at arm's length, because as you've already mentioned, Nick, as a gambling proposition, sports betting is better than casino gambling, because in casino gambling, you cannot win. The odds are fixed. They're written in stone. When you throw the dice, the odds that you're going to roll 7 are the same on every roll. In sports gambling, the odds are dynamic. They change. They're based on information. It's a marketplace. It's much more akin to investing in the stock market than it is to shooting dice in a craps table. But for some reason, sports betting is the gambling right now that's on the chopping block that everybody's looking at and saying, maybe we shouldn't have done this. It's like, well, we already did this with casino gambling in 40-something states. But I think that what in that statement that I just made is kind of the crux of the issue, which is that people have to go to a casino to bet in a casino, to gamble on casino gambling. And that act of having to go to the physical casino makes it a little bit different, where it's like some people do it, some people don't. But if we put casinos on the apps the way we've done with sports betting, we're going to see it's going to be much more dramatic. The levels of gambling in this country, the amount of problem gambling will skyrocket, because we already know how susceptible we are to this from scrolling, playing Candy Crush, all this guy. We already know how the phone can take control of us. And if it turns out that we're going to be addicted to playing online slots the way we're addicted to Candy Crush, but now we're actually going to lose a lot of money. This could be bad. So I think it's a bad way for these sports books to try to recoup the money they haven't made. But I think it's important for us to know they're not making money. None of them are profitable. DraftKings is not profitable. FanDuel's not profitable. And they're not making as much money as they had hoped they would make. And in turn, they're not paying the states as much money as the states had hoped they made. Why? Because they don't know how to book sports. They've kind of fucked it all up. And they don't know they can't turn their business around and figure out how to book sports effectively. So they're saying, all right, give us a slot machine so we can make money.
Yeah. Also, the one take that I've always felt super passionate about is how gambling is the only addiction that you could win in. And for a lot of people, winning is money, right? Like us three, Isaiah and Jory, we could walk to the roulette table and we all throw $100 on red. We could potentially leave with $100 profit each, right? And money won is better than money earned. I'm happy and blessed that I'm doing well now financially, but when I hit a $500 bet, I feel like it's true. And it's way better than the $500 I'd make, editing or doing whatever it is. It's like a different rush and a dopamine rush. The one thing that upsets me the most is betting. There's skill to betting. I've always said that there's betting and there's gambling. Gambling is roulette. It's craps. It's what I used to do in the past. I'd wake up at 12:45 on the East Coast. Cowboys, Pats, Jets. I'll throw the Rams in there too because they're minus 400. No research, no nothing, just off a gut feeling or, I've gotten the worst of the line. I missed the injury report that Adam Schefter puts out. Well, 3 offensive linemen are out. Shit, to me, that's gambling. Betting is what we always portray the show to be, where, this team is really shitty against the run, and here comes Saquon Barkley. He's probably going to score a touchdown. This team is playing their 3rd game in 11 days. I'm probably going to take the Ravens on Christmas, right? Like, that's how we've always been able to differentiate gambling and betting. And I'll go to the grave with it. I think there's a massive difference between the two.
Well, there are professional sports bettors. There are not professional dice shooters.
Right.
There are not professional roulette players, but there are pro sports bettors. And this is a big part of my story too. One of the things I really looked at in the story was the fact that sports books are increasingly limiting people that win in sports. And so this in the beginning,
I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm glad you brought that up because that was the one thing that stood out to me because we're friends with Mozzie. He just hit another $1 million. He's the $1 million bettor. So anytime you see the $1 million bets being put in Vegas, it's always him, right? And I've asked him about that, and he's like been limited in certain casinos too. So I hate to cut you off. I just wanted to mention that because I feel like that just sours your consumer.
Well, yeah. I mean, think about it. I can't think of another business where the interest of the business and their customers are direct. They're completely opposite. They're cross purposes. So the sports book needs you to lose.
Right.
And it shouldn't be that way. And this is what I mean by they don't know how to book sports because people have been booking sports for as long as, for almost 100 years. And out here in Nevada, they always had this business. What we thought would happen after PASPA was that the bookmaking industry that we saw here in Nevada would be exported to all these other states. That's not what happened. It was a completely different type of bookmaking that we're seeing, from the FanDuels and the DraftKings of the world. And limiting winners is a big part of their business model, right? And aggressively, in the early days, they were really only limiting people who, were pretty, like they were there was a smaller percentage of players who were being limited. Now it's a much broader, like they were limiting me. Last year I got limited on DraftKings to like a penny. I can't put an anytime touchdown bet. I mean, I try to make a square bet and they won't let, so like I try to make same game parlays, I get limited on them. So like if they're limiting me, right, then I'm not a professional, sharp sports player. It's out of control. But why are they doing this? It's because they can't, they have to make the profits by limiting winners and maximizing losers. And the other thing I learned last year that was shocking was that the vast majority of sportsbooks profits in the United States come from a very small percentage of players. I think that it's different from different sportsbooks, but generally it's around like 80 to 85% of the profits come from like 5 to 10% of the players. Who are those 5 to 10% players? Well, the industry calls them large wagerers. They tend to think of them as VIP players.
Right.
The industry will tell you these people are all people who are wealthy and can afford to lose less money. It can't, look, I can't prove that it's not true, but it doesn't feel like that could possibly be true, that among that pool of people aren't people who can't afford to lose hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. They need those players to survive. You know, people have said to the industry, well, if we're having if we want to protect problem gambling issues, why don't we just make, or we want to help this issue that you have with winners, or why don't we just make deposit limits or bet limits that are across the board for everybody? Because the one way you could get around, like Circa here in Vegas, their sports book has posted limits for everybody. This is the limit. Everybody can max this bet, and I'm not going to change it for you because you're sharp and you because you're square. Everybody has this max. You ask the regulated sports books on the apps, why don't you do that? They say, well, we can't do that because we need to be able to take a massive bet from the sucker and limit the winner. That's their model. So it's like an unfair model. And I think that when people start to learn this, they think this isn't fair. So now you see that your customer base is pissed off. The legislators are pissed off because essentially what the industry is saying is we're creating more problem gamblers, right? Because that's our major that's where we need people who will bet as much as they lose as much as they can. And so you just are left with nobody who's happy. Everybody's frustrated. And I think that there's another way to do things. And part of what I've been trying to present is that like the industry could pick another alternative path. They don't have to go to mobile gaming to subsidize their shitty sports books. They could book sports differently. They could take a page from the offshore sports books who make billions of dollars not booking sports this way, or even from the industry here in Nevada.
Do you think it's algorithmic limiting, or are there really people hired just to be like, okay, I need you to study these people's plays?
It's the latter. I interviewed a guy for the story who is a player profiler who works for sportsbooks profiling players, and he said that he can profile a winning player within their first 10 bets usually. Like he can tell whether or not a person's going to be a long-term winner, all based on closing line value. That's what they look for, is they look for betting patterns, but they also look to see whether or not you're getting closing line value. And by that, I mean, did you bet the number better than how it closed? And if you do that consistently, you can get marked as sharp and you can get limited. And, the offshore sports, one of the things he told me was every sports book does this. Every sports book profiles the players, even here in Nevada, even offshore. It's only good business too. The way a book like Pinnacle or Chris, these big offshore bookmakers that really have the worldwide liquidity that are creating the real lines that everybody's following, they're profiling their players, but they're moving the line off of that action. So if they profiled you as a sharp player and you come in and make a max bet, they move the line. Right. And they say, okay, that's a bet I respect. So I want to be on the side that he's on because he's on the right side because he's sharp on the sport. I've profiled him. I know he wins at the sport. So he bets with me. I may lose this bet to him, but I'm going to earn off of that info he gave me. Now I'm going to move the line. I'm going to be ahead of the rest of the industry because my guy bet this side. That's how bookmaking always worked. But they don't want to do that way. They want a computer to do it. They don't want to hire skilled bookmakers and have a relationship with skilled bettors. But that's the relationship that has really made the sports betting machine work for 100 years. But it's all changing now. It's all changing. It's all going to be, we're all going to be playing against computer bookmakers. And as soon as we win a few bucks, we get kicked out.
But do you think that's also because it's just so much more accessible to just go online? So for them to use computers, it just makes more sense because traditionally you would just go to a sports book. So you would have, if you were the bookmaker, all right, I know Nick and George, they're sharp. Or I know Nick and George, they're square. So yeah, they want to throw 10K on a bet. Gladly take it. Mm-hmm. Do you think that plays into it too?
I think the technology is what's at the crux here. And what I mean by that is FanDuel, for example, offers, I think, something like 50,000 bets a day, right? They have a massive menu, right? Sportsbooks here in Nevada never used to have a menu like that, right? What we see now with sportsbooks today is that the technology has evolved to a point where like they can take a bet, they can book a bet on literally anything. We have all kinds of player props now, and we have same game parlays where they can combine. So the combinations of bets and the number of bets that they offer is like too large for any human being
to be able to put a real number on it. Yes.
It also means that the surface area that the sportsbook is defending is too big for them to defend. They can't have confidence in all those numbers. And some of these markets that they offer are illiquid, meaning not a lot of people are betting them. And so if the market is illiquid, there's not enough money in that market to make that market sharp, to make it a market that they can trust a number. And if they don't trust a number, they can't take a bet. So if you win in this particular market, they're going to limit you and kick you out because they know that you can beat them. And I think that's what we're seeing, is that the customers, us, want all those options. And the sportsbook says, well, for me to give you all these options, I have to kind of, okay, but then I have to have an advantage, so I've got to make sure that I'm going to like kick you out if you win. Like, that's the problem, right? Nope. We as the bettors don't want to go back to the old school way of bookmaking where the menu is much shorter. And the sports, you know what I'm saying? And the sports books say, okay, well, if we're going to give you that menu, then we have to be willing to kick you out if you show that you can beat us.
Shit, they better start limiting me on offensive player of the year. We're about to three-peat.
Nick, I mean,
You might.
It's terrifying because, like, at what point will the government step in and really, like, peek their eye behind the curtain? Are they just hand in hand? Like, that's what America was founded on, is that this will always exist so that we can have a superior nation, you know, like, or do you think eventually legislation will crack down on these companies and just be like, you guys are this, why would you limit these players?
Right.
It's immoral. It's illogical. Like, what are you guys doing? Do you think they'll like throw the hammer down eventually?
I don't know. I hope so. I think one of the problems we have is that the general public doesn't care, isn't that sympathetic to us right now, right? The plight of the poor gambler is not something that most people care about. We don't have that kind of
Problem is-
but there is some evidence that that's in Massachusetts is taking the lead on this. So the state of Massachusetts is probably the most aggressive state right now in terms of trying to hold the sports books accountable for this practice of limiting. They've had a number of roundtable discussions that they've made the sports books send representatives to where they've grilled them about this. The first time Massachusetts tried to do this, not a single sports book agreed to show up. They said, we're not, they sent letters saying, sorry, we're not going to go to that. So they said, fine, we'll invite a bunch of pro gamblers to the round table instead, and we'll listen to them. This drove the sports books crazy when they saw that. So then they said, okay, we'll come, do another one, we'll come. Then they sent all the representatives. And these guys in Massachusetts, the regulators, went up one side of them and down the other. So Massachusetts has been very aggressive, but there are other states where they're not. And you got to understand the regulators in these various, you know, it's every state has their own thing. And the regulators in some of these states don't know anything. They don't know anything. They were appointed these positions. Some of them came from the horse racing industry. They know nothing about sports betting. Where are they learning about sports betting? From the industry. So one of the things we don't have is sort of people who represent the gamblers' interests in these conversations. And so I'll give a plug to my boy Spanky, who started the American Bettor's Voice. It's a nonprofit that he started with Billy Walters and Richard Schutz, and they've created an organization, and they're raising money that they can hopefully help lobby for having some voice in these conversations around gambling legislation that brings the gamblers interest. You know, one of the things they've been talking about is how the terms of service that you agree to when you sign up for a sports book are like 110 pages long.
Ain't nobody
I can
reading
walk
that.
in this casino right now and walk up to the craps table, make any size bet I want. I don't have to sign anything. The win doesn't say, before you bet on this, you got to sign my 100-page terms of service that says that if you win in this roll, I might be able to deny your bet in case the weather or maybe I made a They can't, that's how the business works. But in sports betting, I'm signing terms of service. I don't even know what they are. And the sports book can come back on me and say, oh, you know what? That number that was wrong. That was a palpable error. We're not paying out. That happens. You see this on Twitter. This happens all the time. So that's one of the things that they're really working on, that and the limiting issue. So this is what I think we need: is we need some way to get these legislators to think about to talk to the gamblers, because the gamblers know as much about this industry as the bookmakers do, and have a different interest that, as you point out, is completely unaligned with the bookmaker.
Bro, I'm not even shocked that you said the amount of people that are in these positions that don't even know the field that they're in, because you would envision a DraftKings or a FanDuel or any one of these major billion-dollar kind of companies, you'd think they'd be competent, and then you realize, like, dealing with certain companies, you're like, how the fuck are you guys successful when you have morons in positions? Like, it would be, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but like, George, imagine if you got offered a job and it's a prestigious job in a field that you know nothing about. it's a lot of that happens, whether it's that field, whether it's the content space, whether it's corporate.
I think it's
corporate
also
stuff,
happening.
too.
It's not just the regulators that the state are appointing. It's also some of the people that run some of these sports.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's
These
not
are-
just
these
the
are
legislators.
These are tech
it's-
companies.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people that are in high positions, these companies come out of the tech industry and not out of the sports betting industry. In fact, some of the real pros from the old school, some of the guys that really create, some of these offshore bookmakers that built some of the most successful sports books in the world were not allowed to come work at they didn't want them. They don't want to, maybe because they got a rap sheet, maybe because, when they were booking, it was illegal. So they've got like a stigma attached to them, but they didn't want these folks. So we have a knowledge base, in America about sports betting that is many, many decades old. And those people that are, that know a lot about how to book sports are not really involved at the high levels of the sports betting industry right now. So I think that's kind of weird.
Do you think that they're making their own offshore? Is that what you were hinting at in saying that like Costa Rica is like the new hub for the black market?
No, Costa Rica has always been the hub. I mean,
Always.
this is where it all, I mean, always in the age of the internet. All the guys that went down to Costa Rica to start offshore sports books in the early days of the internet were American illegal bookmakers. All right, this guy Joe Sacco, they call him the cigar, but Ron Sacco. I'm sorry, the cigar Sacco. He was the biggest bookmaker in America. Guy from San Francisco, made tens of millions of dollars booking sport, maybe more than that, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars booking sports here in America. Went to jail many, many times. He was one of the first guys to go down there, but was the first guy to go down there and really build something big when the internet kind of came out and figured out, what, I can go down there and book bets online and stay away from the American government. They can't get me down there. They built a whole industry down there. Prior to PASPA, if you were betting with a bookie, Nick, you or your dad were betting with a bookie here in the United States. I don't know if you ever logged on a website to make your bets, but like that website was connected to Costa Rica. Every bookie in America was somehow connected to Costa Rica. That's always been. So I went down to Costa Rica and I was writing the story to meet with some of these guys. They were telling me, look, when PASPA got repealed and all these sports books started growing, we lost some of our customers initially, right? They all went to they all started betting on the apps, but they're coming back. Because some of our customers who went over there got limited or whatever, they didn't have credit and they were having to make a lot of transfers back and forth. They didn't like that. So slowly they're seeing that the customers are coming back. Costa Rica's seeing that. And that's because of how the industry here is fucking up, right? And so, that's straight from the horse's mouth. And I think that the offshore industry sees an opportunity here. What's going to happen, I don't know. But, the offshore books are big. Some of them are bigger than at this point, I think FanDuel and DraftKings probably rival or bigger, but these are big international sports books that are offshore and they don't pay taxes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, FanDuel and DraftKings, they're just tied in with every sports team and every league, and it's plastered on the side. And, you go to MSG, there's the BetMGM suite. There's a FanDuel suite if you go to another arena. So, yeah, I mean, that's not a surprise. We need to wrap up, but I wish we had more time with you. I wanted to ask you just one question, dude, because George and I had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and you've been around all these professional bettors and people that make it their livelihood. He has a theory that all of them are negative, like all time. How do you feel about that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I talked about it in the piece, and you mentioned to me before when I went to the blackjack ball when I was doing this story. I've been there before. This is this gathering of some of the top gamblers of the world that happens here in Vegas every year. I mean, there were multiple people at that were billionaires from gambling. I mean, yeah, there's a good number of people in America that make their living full time from gambling. I don't think that they're all negative. I think that it's very possible to earn money, but I don't think that everybody can do it. And I think that it's a very particular type of discipline and job, and it has nothing to do with sports. And that's the important thing people need to understand, is that the people that make the most money betting on sports don't really know a lot about sports.
Yeah. No, that's an absolute fact. Yeah, a lot of it is just number based.
Yep.
We know a lot of pro bettors out here that they don't even watch the games ever. Like, they come on the show with us and they listen. They're like, man, we don't even know who the fuck you guys are talking about. We just see plus 3.5 and we're gonna take it.
That's right.
Or we just see this number and we're gonna take it. So, yeah, it was just interesting. I don't know. Us two disagreed on that.
Well, I said that I feel they could be positive money wise over time, but I feel like with the volume of bets that they've placed, that they've probably lost more bets.
The guys you see on Instagram that are saying buy my picks, those guys are all negative.
Yeah, yeah.
They're selling you picks, they ain't making money.
Yeah.
All right. No, I don't think that any winning bettors are touting. And I think that that's true, you know, because you would need to sell picks.
Yeah. We have a beef with those people. I'm not fans of that. I think me charging you $500 for my Super Bowl package is absolutely ridiculous. We have a Patreon. We do, you know, it's part of our rundown. It's $5 a month. It's not really the picks that you get. Like, that's just an extra feature to it. There's a Discord. There's a community.
They're
there's
supporting the
merch.
show.
Right. You're supporting something bigger than that. But as a bonus, instead of me individually texting everyone, I even tell my friends, I'll send them screenshots of my bets and they'll be like, "Hey, kept that for yourself." I'm like, "Bro, it's up on Patreon. I just give you a list of what I'm betting, so it's easier for me to communicate, easier for the show." By no means do we ever. That's why we also do it $5, because if you tail our Super Bowl picks for $5, you're not like Nick and George are pieces of shit because they gave me some shitty picks. But if it's $500, you're like, "Yo, what is going on?" So I've never liked that from day one. You know, I never was a fan of it. And the one time that I did do it when I first moved to Vegas, because I partnered up with this one company, I kept it as cheap as possible. And some of my peers were like charging 4, 5, 6x. And I was like, man, I'm really only doing this because this partnership, you know, and I regretted it too. And I was like, man, I'd rather just stay on Patreon, bro. It's cheap. We're building a community, and you know, he sees it in the Discord. When people are in the Discord, they're sending us their bets too, and it's a lot of trolling, and it's fun, like healthy trolling. You know what I mean? So, I'm with you, because we know a lot of these guys too, and it's like,
just listen to my podcast, Gamblers on the Ringer. It's a series of audio documentaries about professional gamblers from all walks of life, from all kinds of different games, and you'll see. I mean, they're out there. It's a real thing, but they're few and far between.
Yeah, I know, dude. That's why I'm saying, like, I would equate them to the Saquon Barkleys, the Michael Jordans. Like,
it's the 1% of 1%.
Yeah,
for sure. Yes,
for sure.
But I mean, the fact that they exist.
The fact they exist is the evidence that this is a game, a skill game, and not a luck game. It's betting on sports. I think that's the thing. The takeaway I have is that the fact that professional sports bettors exist.
Got me fired up to put a bet in right now.
Okay.
That single statement right there was like, George, tonight's the night. Yeah. You know, 20-legger.
Why wait 2 weeks for the Super Bowl? Let's go
let's go.
Gotta bet early. You gotta bet early.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Bet the number early.
Absolutely. It's at Dave Hill 77 on Twitter. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This bonus episode of Veterans Minimum, 3-episode week this week. We'll be back with podcast questions from you guys. We're doing a people's podcast later this week since there is no NFL. So you're getting 3 episodes this week. If you haven't checked out the Monday show, the AFC NFC title game recap, please go and check that out. Dave, this is always fun, man. Like I said, I wish we had more time with you. I knew
back,
George. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anytime you're in Vegas, you know the seat is always available. George, when I told him what time he was going to come on the show and what time to come to the studio, I was like, I know we're going to be running up on time, man. Just because he's I still have so many questions. Like, dude, I didn't even ask a lot of the questions I wanted to from the article, but we'll definitely bring you back for that. If there's anything else you want to plug, the floor is yours.
No, my next story I'm working on for Rolling Stone is about fantasy football. It should come out soon, so maybe we can talk about that next time I come on.
Hell yeah, man, because we don't really touch much on fantasy.
Yeah, that would be good for the community.
That is going to be a wrinkle we're adding to next.
I'll send it to you when it
next
comes
year's. Yeah, absolutely. George, where can they find you on social media?
At Mr. George Carmona. This is a pleasure, Dave. Really is.
At Nick Dais 10 as you can find me. There's going to be links to all the stuff David Hill is working on, including the Rolling Stones article. At Veterans Minimum as you can find everything VM. At Nick Dais 10 as you can find me. Thank you all for listening. Peace.
Bye-bye.
I'm a gold medalist, bronze like your medal is. So many deer in headlights, but it's bedtime. Hear that supper bell, main course, be the venison.
Dab. Most dangerous game. Either kill or be killed.